especially pleased to have tonight Chella Krishak, who will be here speaking of her survivor story. As those of you who have participated in past years know, each year we try to have a survivor to be here and speak with us. We're especially pleased this afternoon or this evening to find so many of the students and high school, local high school and junior high students. All of us on the committee, like you, realize that it will be only a short time before there are no more survivors to bear first-hand witness of the Holocaust. That will be a tragedy beyond measure for those of us left and who cannot hear firsthand the things that we hope to learn enough from to avoid in the future. Again, we are pleased that we have the overflow auditorium with the simulcast tonight. I would also make mention to you that the final night of our Holocaust Memorial Program will be held tomorrow in this room when Dr. Paul Kopperman, our longtime chair and advocate of the Holocaust program, will speak to us about the Nazi eugenic campaign against people with disabilities, mental and physical disabilities. We'll also be showing a newly released documentary called A World Without Bodies, documenting the locations and the intent of the Nazis in their persecution of those with disabilities. And then that will close our week-long program that we have each year. Thank you for coming this evening. We're pleased tonight to have the festival choir of the larger Heart of the Valley Children's Choir. Though it is based here in Corvallis and under the direction of Carol Nelson, who is for a long time head of this group. We've invited the group because of their wonderful performance of Psalm 23. And we're pleased to have them. Though they come from Little Corvallis, they performed internationally with the Vienna Boys Choir in Paris and England, across the United States and in Canada. And it's a pleasure to have them here. After they sing, then Danny Robert, the president of Hillel Association on the OSU campus, will introduce our speaker.
Thanks again to the choir for the wonderful song. I'm here on behalf of Oregon State Hillel, and tonight's events are part of a collaborative effort between the Holocaust Memorial Committee here and the Oregon State University Hillel. And I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about what Hillel is for a few minutes. Basically, we're a network for Jewish students so we can connect socially, spiritually, and politically together. And we put on a number of events all year round based on what the members of the group want to have happen. Some of our main events of the year is we had a series of interfaith dialogues with the Lutheran campus ministry that went really well, and everyone learned a lot about other faiths and spirituality. And more Jewish religious undertones. We have a Shabbat dinner once a month, and this year, for the first time in at least a decade, we had a Passover Seder that went really well. And in previous years, and in years where Sukkot falls during the school year, we build a sukkah in the MU Quad. And there's no membership required. You basically just show up to events, and we welcome you as part of our community. It's a great honor for me tonight to introduce tonight's speaker. And I'm not supposed to go into too detailed an introduction because she obviously has her own story to tell, and I, for one, am really excited to hear it. She was born in Holland, and she has one older sister, and her life parallels that of Anne Frank. Fortunately, she made it out alive so she can tell her story and share it with us tonight. Please help me in welcoming Shella Krushek to OSU.
Hello. I'm glad to be here with you tonight. I, for several years, have come to this program, and I said to the gentleman who invited me in October to come here, I don't know, I'm getting old. And he said, none of that, you're not, we won't have it. So here I am, and I've had a very busy month speaking to middle schools and to some churches and some colleges. One in Albany, there was a teacher that got 750 students together, even as young as 5th and 6th graders, and the middle schools. And so there is a need, the teachers feel there is a need to really teach the children, and they teach these programs to them, and it's amazing how well they respond to it. I have thousands of letters under every bed. I have boxes full, and I will treasure them, and one day they'll be in a museum somewhere, but because they make me do it. It's my adrenaline pumps when I see their faces, because I was their age. I was an innocent child at that age when these terrible things happened. And so I say to them, you are me, I am you. I was your age. I want you to listen and to remember this. Because it happened. And they're nearly all gone. The survivors are nearly all gone. I was one of the younger ones. So it's important to still get that message out. The teachers, they beg you to come, and I always say, well, I've done it now well, for many years, and maybe it's time to rest. But she said, Shella, she said, whatever we read, whatever documentaries we see, but if the children see somebody alive that lived through it, and then, of course, I get a compliment. They say, you look older here. My grandmother was older than you, so that's always nice to hear. A little compliment from them. But I will be 75 in 2 weeks, so there you are. But so, the thing is that it gives me energy when I see their faces, and I will continue it for as well as I can stay healthy, and I will still try and do it for several more years. Well, then this story is Shella and Flora. My sister Flora is almost 4 years older than I am. And it's the things, that life, what happened to both of us. I was born in Holland, in the Netherlands, and so were my parents, and so were my grandparents, etc., as far as we know. And we lived in the city of The Hague. And my father had 7 sisters. He was the only boy. And I remember that his mother would come and spoil him. I thought it was so silly because he was 50 years old, and I thought that he was her little boy. Now I have myself a child that age, so, and I do the same thing. So there you are, what goes around comes around. So he had 7 sisters, and they had children, and they had grandchildren, and it was a huge family. I don't know how many cousins I had, lots of cousins. They ranged in age from 9 months to 35. There were beautiful, good-looking boys, wonderful babies, wonderful girls, one little redhead, a long red curls, beautiful people. I recall their faces as I speak. My life was a little sad, maybe as a youngster more than somebody else. My mother died when I was 5. And Papa said that some of the aunts would take one, but we didn't want to be separated, Flora and I. So what one aunt did take us for a couple of years, and she ruined us, so they had to take us away from her because she spoiled us rotten. And so there was a home in the city. It was a Jewish home, and it was called an orphanage, but it was a children's home. Some children were there that came as far as Belgium, or maybe like 30 to 35 children. They came, some of them from problem homes, and boys and girls. So Papa said, it was very close to where he lived, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you girls in that home for just maybe a year, and then I will find a nice lady to be your mommy again. So I remember when he brought us to there, I cried bitter tears. My father, and we idolized him. He was our everything for all those years, and we just worshipped him. But he said, now you will die because you have brothers and sisters, and indeed, we used to fight like brothers and sisters, and we were friends, and it was really, I learned about my religion in that home. It was wonderful, because we come from a very liberal background, but I learned about it, which was wonderful. It stayed with me for the rest of my life. And I learned to care and share at an early age. I learned to be unselfish, because you had to share. Whatever you had to share. And so the years went by, and Papa used to pick us up on a Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours and take us to grandmother's house. My grandma would have the Dutch cakes and the candies and all that. And then there were birthdays every week, so if somebody had a birthday, she would go visit all the aunts and the cousins for birthdays. And then, after about 3.5 years, my father introduced us to a lady who was getting married. She was an English woman, born in England. She lived in Amsterdam, widowed, and he was going to marry her. And so he said, I'm going to take you home, out of this home, to your own home with your own papa. Every night you'll be home with me. That was in January of 1940. And I want to go back to 1938 a minute. I was born in 1928, so in 38 I was 10 years old. And in the middle of the night, one night in November in 38, there was screaming going on in the home. And I remember children screaming, and I shared a room with 15 people to sleep. And all of a sudden, about 50 children were brought into our rooms, and we had to put them into our bed. And what we were told was these were German refugees, children from Germany. It was Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass in Germany, when the synagogues were burned, when the men were taken out of their stores and they broke the windows and beat the Jews. And so everybody stood by and let it happen. And I think the word bystander must come from that. And when I talk to the children in school, I say, if you stand by and somebody's being picked on that is not your color or your religion, or you don't like the way they look, and you don't do anything, it's Kristallnacht. You do a very bad thing, but you don't speak up. You have to speak up and be right. Don't let those things happen, because you will be guilty. And so they were the guilty ones, the bystanders. So that night, when all these 50 kids were brought into the home, we had to double up. There was not much room for all those kids. And one little girl was crying so hard. She was 5 years old. And I took her in my arms in my bed, and I said, don't cry, Mommy will come and get you. She didn't hear what I was saying, and she was speaking German and I couldn't understand. But I tried to tell her, Mutti is coming, Mutti will be coming to get you. Well, that wasn't true, but I didn't know that. I was naive at 10. But I already was exposed to that. So now, that stayed in my mind, that those children were all in that home and hoping that the parents would come and get them. So in January of 1940, my father gets married and he takes my sister and I home. It was so wonderful to have our own bedroom, just the two of us, and to see my father home every night. And 5 months later, in the 10th of May, Germany bombed Holland flat. Well, Rotterdam was bombed flat, the rest of it wasn't so bad. But Rotterdam was bombed, the harbor, and it was such a fast war, they were so strong, that on the 15th of May, they walked into Holland early in the morning. I was standing on the side of the street. I was 12 years old that day. What a birthday present. And I was nervous, and I felt exhilarated, I felt very funny. And I ran home to my father and I said, Papa, I saw all the German soldiers march practically over my feet. And there was no end to them, there were so many of them. What's going to happen to us? And he said, well, Shella, I hope nothing will happen to us, but won't happen to anybody else. But we are Jews. He'd never said that before. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, do you remember what happened to the German children, the German Jewish children that were boarded to the orphanage? The parents put them on a train so that they would be safe. And so far the parents never came. And they did terrible things to the Jews in Germany then. And now the Germans are here, and we are Jews. But you know what? I shouldn't even say that to you and worry your little head on your 12th birthday yet. You know, we are Dutch. Oh yes, we are. Nothing will happen to us. Everything will be fine, Shella. But that night I went to bed with my sister and I again on the bedroom, and we did talk about it and worry about it. We were now being occupied by the Germans. But I went to school the next day and tried to do our life as much normal as we could. And for a couple of months it went. For about 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, maybe the year 1941. Notices come in the newspaper that all Jewish children cannot go to school anymore, to the regular schools. They have to wear a yellow star on the left side of all their clothes. Yellow star with the word Jew written on it. And they can't go, they have to go to school only far away where only other Jewish children go. They're not allowed to have any other teachers but Jewish teachers. They are not allowed to go to the park anymore. There are big signs, forbidden for Jews to go to the park. Forbidden for Jews to go to the swimming pool, which I belong to a swimming club to go swimming. Papa, I said, I can't go swimming anymore. I can't go to the park anymore. Trams, forbidden on trams. Buses, not going on buses. Movies, forbidden for Jews. Boom, boom, it hit you every week. There was something else. But when I got home from the orphanage, my father said I could choose a gift what I wanted. And I said I want a bicycle. And that bicycle meant everything to me. That was the best gift I ever had in my whole life. Even today I look back on that as the best gift. And now there was a sign in the newspaper, Jewish children have to give up their bicycles. They cannot ride the bicycles anymore. That was the worst thing that could have happened to me at that time. Because at that time, nothing could get worse for me but to give up my bike. And I cried to my father, Papa, no, my bicycle, you gave it to me, I want to ride it, it is but my freedom. I go to the library, to the swimming pool, I go all over the place, that I can't give it up. He said, but we have to, you have the star, you're not allowed to ride it. But you know what, Shella? And he put his hand on my head, like this. I pray for you, Shella, he said, that will be the worst thing that will ever happen to you, that you have to give up your bike. But Papa, it is the worst thing. What could be worse? Nothing could be worse in my mind. Well, I soon learned that things could be worse. So when that happened, the next thing was, a notice in the newspaper that all 16-year-olds through 25 had to go to a station, to the railroad station, with a suitcase with some clothes, with their favorite books, and they would go to a labor camp for young people. So what happened, the young people all had to leave their home from 16 to 25. And then they would go to a labor camp. When I saw that big yellow envelope on the table with Flora's name on it, I screamed. I went insane. I said, Papa, not my sister. They can't have my sister. They can't have my Flora. Please, please. He said, Shella, I will try to see if I can find somebody to hide her. Please, you go to school today and I'll see what I can do. And he was frantic, he looked all white. The whole family got together that night, all the aunts and uncles and the cousins, they had to do the same thing. All those boys got those letters in the mail. And they sat together talking. I heard them talk and I heard them cry. What are we going to do with our children? And I was so nervous and frantic to hear all that. And I thought, oh, my sister, what will happen to her? And I went to school the next day. And when I came home, Flora was gone. I said, oh, Papa, Flora, where's Flora? He said, Shella, please don't ask me where she is. But a good person came and went to get her. And you may not tell you where she is, because if you knew where she is, then maybe one day they would get hold of you and would make you tell. So you cannot tell. You don't know. I went to bed alone into my nice bedroom. That house for such a short time was so nice, our own home. I appreciated everything so much. And I was alone in that bedroom, and I cried myself off to sleep. But I was relieved that she was safe, but I was afraid also. And I went to school with all the other Jewish children out right on the coast. And I had to walk, I had no bike, because the tram was a long walk. And when I got there, to the school, I had a little friend, his name was Leon, and I was now 14, 2 years have gone by. And he was 14 years old, and he was such a nice boy. He said, can I carry your books? That means that we were dating. And he carried my school books. He was such a sweet boy. He got to be late when he shopped with his father to do little errands for his father, was a butcher, because he said, well, I had to carry Shella's books home for him. It was way out of the way, you know. But so we used to get together at each other's house and play records. So there's those black things that turn around, you know. And so we played records at each other's house, but after all, we were teenagers. And we had no chance to be teenagers, but we were. And so I had a girlfriend that went to that school, because years ago, when we were 4 or 5 years old, we played at each other's house. And now she was also in that school, because there were all the Jewish children there. We were in the same class. Her name was Henny. And we used to go to her house and to my house, and we tried. But you know, Flora was gone, her older sister was already gone too. And now one day I come home and my father had been picked up practically in front of the door. They picked up, first of all the young people were gone, and now the men. They picked up all the men. The men had to go first. So now what is left at home are the women with the small children. It was a very well devised plan, and it worked. And so when I come home, and I can't tell you what I went through when I saw that my father had been picked up. He was brought to a small camp in the south of Holland. It was also a labor camp, still within the Dutch borders. And he was able to write a letter out of there, smuggle a letter out of there, and he had to be careful what he was writing. And he said, you must see to it that you never get here. And my stepmother said, we better see if we can find a hiding place. I don't know where to go, what we're going to do. And so I was in school one day, and there was a big knock at the door of the schoolroom, and the teacher goes there, and as she opens the door, there are 2 Gestapo men standing there with their uniforms and their revolver in, and they march with their boots right into the middle of the class, and they are petrified. And they say, we've come here to pick up a few children, because we have the green wagon outside, the police wagon, and we have several parents in there from these children. Now, I want Leon the Young to get up, and it was my friend. And he called out other people too. And Leon walks to the door, and he turns around and he says to the Gestapo, why? Why? And he said, well, your mother and father are in the van, and your two little sisters, and you're missing. You're the last one, so you have to go. My heart stopped, I couldn't breathe, I'm fright. And he looked at me, and he walked to the door, and he said, bye, Shella. That was the last goodbye. That was the last that we saw that child. I was afraid to go to bed, to sleep. They were hauling people off their bed in the middle of the night. There was a Jewish family across the street from us, an elderly gentleman with his daughter. He had a little dog, and I had a little dog, and we would go together to the grocery store. And he said, come on, shall I walk with me? And in the middle of the night, they picked up that gentleman with his daughter. And we lived across the street. And my stepmom said, well, it isn't safe anymore to go to school. I'm picking up the kids out of school, and I don't know what to do, but we are going to do. But you go to school today, and I see what I can do. When I went to school, the teachers said, it's better that you don't come anymore to school, because it's not safe. When I went home that night, my stepmother was gone. I was all alone in the house. I ran up and down the stairs to see what is happening. The little dog was gone. I cried for that. My bicycle was gone. I cried for that. My father was picked up. I wept. My sister was safe. Where was my stepmother? I sit in the house, in the room, and it gets dark. And I don't know what to do. I wait. The doorbell rings. I look out, I don't see a van. I open the door, and this gentleman comes up the stairs. He said, Shella, please don't be afraid, because you know me. And I said, yes, I do know you. You're the one that has the grocery store, where I go every day to buy the cheese and the little bit of food what we need, and I come to you every day with my little dog. He said, well, so you do know me, and you know where the store is. Well, I'm taking you with me. I said, you're what? He said, yes, I'm taking you with me because you're all alone in the house. Your stepmother is in the hospital. The doctor put her there because for observation, so-called, a good doctor, because we don't know what to do with her. She couldn't find a hiding place. So she was in the hospital, but she could only be there for a while. So now you're all alone, and you have to come. I'll take you home with me for a little while until we can find another place for you. And I ran up and down the house. For the last time I was inside that house, only for 2 years. And I run up and down in the bedroom, and I look at everything, and I look at my mother's, my father's room, my sister's bed. And I look at all of those things, and I think, oh, I have to leave this now, and what's going to happen? And I started to cry. And he said, Shella, don't cry. I'm trying to save your life. And he held my hand, and I said, can I take something? He said, no, because there are Dutch citizens that are Nazi sympathizers, and some may live across the street. So you can't take anything, just pretend we're going for a little walk. So I took nothing but my school book and put a coat on, and I thought if only I'd taken a photo album with some pictures from the family. And so I walked with him to the house, and tears are running over my face. And as we come close to the door of his grocery store, he said, you know, Shella, you're going to smile today. You're going to be happy. And I said, I will never be happy anymore or smile. How could I? But I promise you, he said. And he walked me through the grocery store, and I go through the door to the back room, and Flora is standing there. He'd been hiding my sister for 6 months already. Those were the good humanitarians among us who risked their life to save a child at the risk of their own life. And I flew into Flora's arms. I put my arms around her and I said, oh Flora, if I can just stay with you in this little bedroom here till the end of the war, then just the two of us will be together and we will never be apart. And maybe that will be good, if you could just stay in this little room. And Flora said, I hope so. And so we did that for a while. We said that little boy went out of his bedroom, little twin bed, and we slept with each other's arms around each other. And we felt safe with the warmth of each other's body. And so we stayed there for a while, and we go during the day in the kitchen to peel 10 potatoes for lunch and 10 potatoes for dinner. That's all there was. And so after a while, there is a knock at the door after several weeks, and my stepmother is standing there. And she said, the doctor said, get out of the hospital today. Over the weekend, they're going to raid all the hospitals, and they will take the Jewish people off the intensive care, of the doesn't matter what is going on, they will take all the Jews out of the hospitals and they will go into the van to the camp. So she ran out and she said, please, can you give me a place? And he said, you know, I already don't have room for the two, but okay, come on in and we'll think about what we're going to do. After several weeks went by, probably, I don't exactly how long, but there's a telephone call. And the gentleman of the house, we call him uncle, aunt and uncle, he goes to answer the phone and he said, children, listen to this. Your father is in the hospital in a small city in the south of Holland. I said, what? He said, yes. What happened is, Papa told us afterwards, that he found out that all the people in the camp are going to go on the cattle trains to the east. They were going to go that next weekend. And they rode to work on their bicycle. And then they had to make pile of bricks, or they had to make rolls, or some hard labor work. And so when he was with his bicycle to go to work that day, that he heard that, there was a big canal with a high dike. And he rode at the edge of the canal and rode the bike into the canal. Of course, by the time he reached the bottom of the canal, he'd broken both of his legs and part of his hip, and he was in pieces. And since there was no hospital in the camp, in that small camp, they couldn't leave him laying there, so they brought him to that local hospital, the German. They did do that. And so he was there, and he said to the doctor said to him, you can trust me, tell me if somebody can get you out of here. The minute I put a cast on you and it comes off, it's going to take a while, but somebody has to come and pick you up, because the minute you can walk, they'll come and get you. So this doctor called, because the phone number my father had, because my sister was there after all. He got her there. And doctor said that as soon as you can, come and get him, I'll let you know when. Months went by, Papa got a lot better. He was crippled, very badly. But one night, late at night, the man went with false identification and got my father back into the house where we were. What a reunion. You can imagine. And Papa said, Shrella, I don't ever want you to complain that you're in hiding, that you go crazy, that you can't see the street. Because I said that to him, because what is out there, Shrella, all our family's been picked up, all our friends, we don't hear a word of where they are, not a word. And now, we are safe right now, they're risking their life, we have to be grateful for every moment. And so, Papa and I would sit together and talk about our books, what we were reading, and the kids come home every day, every week with 5, 6 books at a time. And I read till the middle of the night, till 3 in the morning, to get my mind off the terror around us. And so, after a while, the man was worried that there were so many of us in one house. So they said they had to look for a place. What happened, that part of Holland was very close to the ocean. And the Germans had mined the dunes, the beaches, because they were convinced the British were going to invade. They went to Dunkirk instead, but they thought they were going to invade all along the Holland coast. And they were evacuating all the people that lived in that area. So the people we stayed with were going to be evacuated, and they were going to go to the inner city and have his shop again, his grocery store. And they were looking at places where they could go to. So one day, already a lot of people were gone. So one day, I'm in the kitchen with my sister, we're doing cleaning or something, and the lady comes running back to the kitchen. She says, Shrella and Flora, take your father, all of you, get up to your hiding place. There are 3 Gestapo men in the shop. They're going to do a house search. They picked this house, they picked maybe other homes. because they wanted to look first of the evacuation, or maybe somebody had said something, that they saw something. And so my feet were glued to the ground. I couldn't move. I was terrified. And Flora and I, because Papa weighed so little, we practically carried him up the stairs between us. And he couldn't walk very well. And so when we got him upstairs into the bedroom, there was a big closet. It was the bedroom of the parents, where the son slept with them. And there was a huge closet. And when you opened the closet doors, there were the clothes. And behind the clothes was a drape. Behind that drape was a door that led into another apartment. And the people had been the week before evacuated to the inner city. Our luck. Because we didn't know if the people were to be trusted or not. So we go, shrieking like leaf, we go into that closet, we close the drape, we go into that kitchenette, we close the door, and we hear the boots come up the stairs. We hear them come up, and we can't breathe. I wanted to scream. And my father put his hand over my eyes, over my mouth, and he said, look into my eyes, don't breathe. And we heard them come, open the closet door. I was terrified. And they left, they closed the door and left. They didn't look behind the drape. We were saved by the drape. Oh. I couldn't walk. We had to go walk down the stairs. It was the first time of many years to come of stomach pains that were beyond belief. And when we got together that night, they said, there's way too many of you here. We're going to go to the inner city. I'll take the 2 old people, but the 2 kids, you have to go to other places. So they got hold of the underground, and they found a place for Sheila with a family with 5 children. They raised in age from 9 to 16. Wonderful people, humanitarians. There was everything on one floor. There was no hiding place there. There were apartments, one on top of the other. There was no rooftop or anything. And so I stayed with that family, and Flora was, I don't know where she was, in another city. And my parents went with the grocery man to a little shop in the city. And I stayed with that family. It must have been for 9 months. And I loved them. They treated me like one of their children. But I hid in a little bedroom many, many days, many, many nights when people would come to the house. And I would read and read and read. And I did not go to sleep till 4 in the morning because my nightmares were there. And you can imagine what the nightmares were like. The nightmares where they would come and get me. They would come and get me. And I was always so afraid of that. And so time went by. I've now, one day, a house search in that house too. And everything is on one floor, and one of the children comes running up the stairs. There's Dutch police. I go from door to door, and they're looking in people's homes. And when they came to my door, I didn't know where to go, and the auntie said, go to the toilet. And the toilet is a closet in the hall, and that's the toilet. It's not like the fancy bathrooms we used to. Just a toilet in the hall, in the closet. So I went on there, and I put the little hook on it, and she said, don't get off the toilet, stay there no matter what happens, don't get off. And I hear the policeman come in, and he goes through all the rooms, he goes through all the bedrooms, and he opens the closet door in the hall, the linen closet, the broom closet, and now he's with the toilet, and he pushes up the door, and he said, what is this? And auntie said, that's the toilet. He said, well, who's there? Anna. She said, it's my little girl. Well, tell her to get off. What's her name? Sophie. Sophie, get off. And I say, I can't. I have a tummy ache. Believe me, I didn't have to fake it. And I sat there shaking like a leaf. I thought, oh my God, he's going to break the door down, then what? But he stayed for a while, and he went into the kitchen to sit down. And then he said, you know what, when is she going to get off? And auntie said, once she gets on there, forget it. I hear her say that. And I thought, whatever happens, I'm not getting off. Finally, he left after quite a while. He said, I come back tomorrow. I want to talk to her. And he gets away, and he had a lot more work to do that day. And I got off there, and I thought, that was the second time. Would I be so lucky the third? And so I had to go away to another place, and I stayed in another hiding place, and in another hiding place. I don't know how many different places they shipped me to. I went crazy. I thought, what could be so bad? I'm going to run in the street, and I'm going to go, and they'll pick me up. I will be walking in a camp, and I'll work. I can't stand it anymore. Sometimes it was too much to be all the time cooped up in a room. But I stayed, and then when a year and a half went by of hiding, I said to the man that I stayed with, Uncle Jan, I said, I want to go and see my father. I want to see if he's okay. I haven't seen him, I don't hear. He was crippled, he didn't look good. I need to touch him, I have to touch him. And he says, absolutely not, fella. Are you crazy? You're not going in the street. I said, I have false identification. I'll go on the tram and I'm going. And I threatened to go. So he took me. And then I come to the inner city, where Papa was, in hiding, with that family. I come through the door of the grocery store, and I go in the back, and as we open the other door to the living room, Flora is standing there. She was in Rotterdam. She had said exactly the same thing to the people that she stayed with, because she wanted to see her father too. And she had just had a birthday. And so, that is called mental telepathy, don't you think? And so I flew in her arms, and I flew in Papa's arms, and Papa had a little room, a little tiny attic room, and it was the only room upstairs, and it was a very old house, very old neighborhood with cobblestones, and when you look out of the window, you see all the red tile roofs from all the little houses all around you, and I would sit with Papa, I said, Papa, let's jump out of the window and walk on the rooftops and jump. And he said, I wish we could escape like that, but it isn't possible. I said, I want to go away. I want to get away. And he said, Shrella, I have to talk with you. You have to be brave and strong. You have to stick it out, because we have a place to stay. It was very naughty that you came. You mustn't come and do this again. But I'm so happy to see you. And he gave me something. He gave me courage. He said, you know, Shrella, you have to be brave and strong. You have to look at yourself. You can't look at somebody else, but only to yourself. And you have to say, I could do anything I want to do. I said, I do. And he said, and the bicycle, remember, the bicycle, when the war is over, I take you to the bicycle shop, the best bike. And Papa will go back to school, and Papa will start his business again, and you will help him. And he, in the situation that we were in, he was optimistic. And he gave it to me. He gave it to me that I could do anything, that I am brave and I'm strong, little things like that, and that I could do anything. And we would read together, listen to the BBC at night, hear the radio and listen to the news from the British side, and we get a little hopeful that the war soon will be finished. We talked about our family and friends, who knows where they were, nobody had heard anything, we didn't know where they were. And so, after 5 days spending the most famous, wonderful, best days of my life, those 5 days with my father. I go to sleep that night. The next day we had to go back to our hiding place. And he said, you go back to your hiding place, thank God there are good people, and don't you dare leave it until the war is over. You must be brave, Shrella. And so that night I asked, could I please sleep with him and hold his hand? Just let me hold your hand, Papa, so I won't have my nightmare. And I did that. And I slept. 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a terrible noise at the front door. A banging, a bang. 6 in the morning, I hear that banging. That's not good. I put a blanket over my head, I put a pillow on top of my head, and I thought, I think my nightmare is coming. And I hear the boots come up the stairs. Right, they knew where we were. We were betrayed by a member of the family that hid us. And he was dating a high Nazi officer. They knew our names. They came into the room, pointed a revolver at us, and said, "Get dressed, you have 10 minutes. Call us out by our name." I stayed in the bed. Papa said, "Shella, get up, Shella, they're here." I said, "No, Papa, I'm having my nightmare. I always have this nightmare." He said, "Shella, this time there is no nightmare. They're here for us." I got out of the bed. I stood in front of him, and he put his hand on my head, and he said, "Remember when I said you have to be brave and strong? This is it. This is it, Shella. You have to be brave and strong now, because Papa can't help you." Later in years, when I had children myself, I thought the suffering of the parents before they went to their death, that they couldn't help their children. We got dressed, all of us, and we were brought to interrogation headquarters in the city. It wasn't very far from where the big federal penitentiary was, on the coast, Scheveningen, right on the coast of The Hague. The whole day long we were interrogated. They took my beautiful sister, she was so beautiful, and took her by herself in for the whole day long. They took her there. She came out crying, her eyes swollen. And then after that, the men were taken away from the women. It was full of people there. And we had to walk to the federal penitentiary. It was a huge prison. I used to ride my bicycle around it because my school was around the corner. And as we go through the gates of this big prison, with the iron gates, I looked at the policeman and I said, "What are you doing to us? Why are you bringing us here? What are we for criminals? I don't want to go in there." And he said, "I'm following orders. I'm sorry." And we were put in there. All day long we stood in the hall. And finally, they put us in a cell. But I said the bicycle was the worst thing, or the hiding. That cell, to be in that cell for a month, was atrocious. It was terrible. 5 of us, we slept on a stone floor with a little bit of straw, a pail in the corner. We were allowed to play cards, and they brought some books in. A little door open through the door to get your food. I thought, what is next in store for us? I read, can I read a book? They kept on reading, I don't know, 5 times. I needed to get away from it. I needed to read, I needed not to think. My sister was a complete wreck. She cried a lot. And we stayed in that cell, and at the end of the month, they opened the door, and they said, "We're going to put you on a train to a camp, and you all stand to attention and go in there." And the camp, on the other side of the platform, there are a lot of men. And there was one man, kind of short of stature, but he kept on standing on his toes to put his arm up in the air and say, "Be brave, be strong." It was my Papa. Even then, to give us courage. We went into the train, and several hours later we arrived in the Camp Westerbork. The Camp Westerbork is a Dutch concentration camp for all the Dutch people that put there first. And from there the cattle trains would stand up till your eye could no longer see them. It had been put up first in the beginning when all the German refugees come from Germany. That camp had come to be established. But now it was a camp for everybody to go through. A transport camp it was. That was what it was called, transport lager. And so, as I come off the train, the people that are there, some of them, they have little jobs to do, to take care of all the prisoners that come in. It's my little girlfriend, Henny, who helps me off the train. The one when I was 4 years old, the one in the school. I said, "Oh, Henny." She said, "Shella, I'm so sorry to see you here. You know, some of your family members went through here. And your cousin with the 2 little kids. And your teacher, our teacher was here, Mr. Englander. Remember? And his little girl. And now it's not good. You're in the punishment barracks. And when you're in the punishment barracks, when you've been picked up because you've been in hiding, within 2 weeks you're in those cattle trains." "What are those cars?" She said, "Well, these are cattle cars, And that's where they put you in. Every week, at least 1,000 have to be filled. 1,000 people have to go in there every Tuesday. And everybody tries to fight to get a job, to do something, not to go in there. To bargain, to do something, not to get in. They had been there for quite a few months, some little jobs that they had in the camp. But she said, you don't have a chance, you go. That's where you're going to go. Well, something happened. My father was put in the sick barracks because he couldn't walk very well. And we were in the barracks, in the punishment barracks, in the back. And after we were there for about a week, and I went to see my father every morning to just see how he was, and he had an ache, and he would have that boiled egg. Maybe that's why I'm still so crazy about eggs, but the doctor said I should eat them. But he would say, Shrella, this egg is for you. And I would say, no, Papa, it's for you. And for 10 minutes we argue over the egg. We wound up cutting it in half and half and half each. And it was such a luxury, an egg, you know, such a luxury. So because he was in the sick barracks. So then I'm in seeing him every day, and we talk, and he talks about brave and strong, who knows what ahead of us. Everybody in those sick barracks are worried, are all sick people in there. And so I go back into the barracks, and that night, a man comes into the barracks and he says, Flora and Falafel, yes, I need about 25 people who are 16 to 25 years old, and I'm going to put your name on the list. There is a camp in Holland called Vught, it's near Eindhoven, and the Philips factories are there. And the Philips factories, Mr. Philips tried to save a lot of people, Schindler's List, and he tried to save a lot of young people to get them to work in the factory that was set up in the camp. There were factories inside of the camp, barracks with machines to make lamps for communication. And he said, you better go tell your father that you should go on that because you still will be in Holland. And your father's going on the train to the east in the next few days, that he's going to go. So I went to Papa and I said, Papa, we shouldn't go, it is a chance, and I tell him that story. And he said, you know, we should be together as a family to take care of each other. And he said, Shrella, no, while you can be in Holland with Flora, the two of you stay and work and do whatever you have to do, you do. Because you're still within the Dutch borders, but across the border we don't know. And then, later on, you come and look for me. Your old Papa, he was 53. So, I had to say goodbye to my father then. And he showed me how he could walk without a cane from here to here, 5 or 6 steps. And he said, I do what I have to do, and you have to do what you can do. And he stood in front of me and he said, I want you to live. I want you to promise me that you will live. I said, what are you saying? I want you to live. I want you to hang on to Flora's hand and never let go of Flora's hand. And I want you to live. Repeat after me. And I did. And then, be brave and strong. Now you have to really be brave and strong. And with that, we turned around and walked away. And I went on the train to the labor camp. I cried so hard, I thought I would bust from the tears. I went into that camp. It was a concentration camp. There were a lot of political prisoners there too. And we worked. And because we worked, they gave us a bowl of soup. And Mr. Phillips saw to it that we learned the trade. He was honored by the Queen after the war. But in the meantime, we are there, and every day they get up, we do our job. And it's electric wires, there's the guards with the rifles at you, and you had to, it was a camp. But compared to what happened afterwards, we thought of it as paradise. So now we are several months in that camp. I was 15, my 15th birthday I had in hiding, and my 16th birthday I had in camp. One day they call up all of our names, all of our numbers, and we had to go to the platform where the trains would come in. And there are the cattle cars standing there. There they are, from one side to the other. And they said, you're going in there, this train is going to the east, no Jews are to be left in Holland. Judenrein, free of all the Jews. And we stood all night long on the platform. They got us in the car and they got us out. If you saw Schindler's List, rank for me, a really memory. And he got us off. But 2 weeks later, they did the same thing. And this time, they couldn't get us off. And we were pushed in that cattle train on top of each other. 60, 70 people to a train, room for 30. I sat on Flora's lap with my arms around her. And it was terrible to be locked up in that cattle car. And I said, Flora, we're going to see all our family now. We're going to a camp and we'll see all our cousins, our young cousins there. Where else would they be? And she said, well, I hope so, that we would see them. And so I sat in her arms, and we sat for 4 days and 4 nights in that cattle car, without food, without water. By the time we came to our destination, we were dehydrated, we were sick, we were in a very bad condition. We went through the whole of Germany. I looked through the slats of the train, and I could see the names when we left the Dutch border, and I could see the German names. And I went through the whole for Germany. After 4 days and 4 nights, we went through the station masters. They would see the trains go in, all these German cities. And then all of a sudden, they see a name. I was the one that looked through the slats of the train, and I see a name, but it's not a German name. O-U-S-Z, I spell it out for the girls, W-I-S-Z. And one of the girls in the train says, I know a little Polish, that's Poland, it's a Polish name, that's Auschwitz. What we now know in our language as Auschwitz. And so we had arrived, it was midnight, it was past midnight, and the train stopped, and it stops on the railroad tracks. Next to us is another train, people crying in there. They said, we are from Hungary. And they've been there all day long in the train. That was the year when the Hungarian Jews were burned and gassed in Auschwitz, a million of them. We had no idea where we were. We were sitting in the cattle cars, and when the train stopped, we stopped breathing. All of a sudden, the doors open from the train. The doors are being opened. And the guards standing there with German shepherds and truncheons in their hand, and they're calling us, screaming at us, jump, jump off the train. Well, we've been sitting like this for 4 days and 4 nights. We couldn't even stand up. And we fell over. And they beat us as we fell over to stand up straight. And the German shepherds, still scared of them today, they jumped at us and barked at us, and they were hitting us with the truncheon. And they called us, you verfluchte Juden, you damn Jews, you scum of the earth, you're whores. And they swore constantly at us, non-stop. In loud voices, they were screaming at us. And I looked up to the sky, and it was black with smoke, flames coming out, stinking smell. I said to Flora, have we arrived in hell? And indeed, it was hell. It was called Auschwitz. We had no idea, it was like being in a twilight zone. We had to stand to attention, and we stood in attention on the platform. And then, after hours of that, we saw a gate and it said, Arbeit macht frei. Work makes free. And as we went through there, we didn't know how lucky we were, because we were not selected for the gas chamber. Like I found out afterwards, that people that come through the gate, there's always someone standing there selecting them. And the German guards that were with us on the train said, this is the Phillips Group. And because we had that name, the Phillips Group, we came in as one unit through the camp. And as we walked in there, they were brought to the sauna. And when we were in the sauna, They took off our clothes. They gave a number on our arm. A number on our arm, shaved all our hair, all over our body, and we stood naked in the sauna in front of the open windows for hours till daylight. It was 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. The high German command came in to look at us. And they came to look at us, and they say, here, you, one by one, come here, turn around, turned our bodies around, looked at our bottoms to see if we were hiding anything, talking about civilization being a thin veneer. It was stripped of us, ripped of us. Nobody cried. At that time, we were beyond tears. And the girl that had to put the numbers in her arm said, you don't cry, you stay, you can work, and if you can work for a while, you'll be okay. But if you can't work, and you get sick, and everybody gets sick, you go through there. I said, what do you mean you go through there? Well, you see all those pipes with the smoke and the flames? Those are the gas chambers and the crematoriums. And every day they burn people. I stood in front of her and I said, you are crazy. She said, yes, I am. But you can take my word for it. And I found out, of course, very soon that it was true. Afterwards, some clothes were there to put on a kind of a prison dress and some boots to put on, hippie shoes to find a pair without even underwear or anything. And we had to walk to our barracks. The barracks were toward the outskirts of the camp. And when we were into the barracks, there was a German Aufseherin, a woman, guard, who was screaming at us and beating at us and telling us we had to behave, we would be punished. And we were brought into the stube, and there was 3 rows of beds, room for about 3 people on each bed, 4, and we had to go 10 of us to one bed. We were laying on top of each other. If you get out, you never go back in. And I immediately got dysentery and got very sick. I lost like a pound, would just fall off me, and I couldn't eat. And we got 1 loaf of bread between 5 people, loaf, and a bowl of soup with 5 people, 1 spoon each, maybe each 3 or 4 spoons, and you would stand an hour dividing the spoons of that watery soup and that piece of bread. And when I couldn't eat flour, I shoved it in my throat and made me eat it. We have to keep our strength. And so, in the morning, we heard music, and I thought, what do I hear for music? And we heard a full orchestra playing Beethoven, Brahms, Bach. The prisoners, they had the musicians in the front, they had instruments, and they were playing music, the prisoners. And the people were walking behind them. They called them Musclemen. They walked like they were zombies. They worked in the fields, or other places where they had to go to work. We were in those barracks, and we had to do either stand to attention all day, or go and cut little bricks and pieces. And the hunger was terrible, there was not enough food, the filth was terrible because you didn't get a shower, and you were being punished for everything and nothing. In front of the barrack was a pail, and on the pail you had to go relieve yourself. Whoever was last in the pail had to take the pail full of to wherever the so-called toilet was. It was like a cement block with holes in it. And once I sat on there, I had such pains in my tummy, so I was often chosen. Then you were filthy dirty, and Flora would stand by the barracks, and the rain would come off the gutter, and she'd get the gutter on a piece of her dress, and wash my hands, and wash my face, to get a little water on me. And one day, the woman, Aufseherin, the woman comes, and I am having terrible tummy ache, and I'm not allowed to go to the so-called bathroom, and I'm dirtying myself. And she said, look at this swinehorn, the filthy Jew, let's make an example of her. We have to beat her up or something. And she said, go and sit on your knees. And I had to sit on my knees with bricks in each hand, and sit there the whole day long with those bricks held up, with no food or no water. And I was so weak already, and my sister became incensed. She became so angry, and she got hold of the German guard, and she pulled off her head, and then she pulled up, actually she had a handful of hair, she pulled her hair out of her head. She was so angry that she pulled hair out of her head, and of course after that happened, they beat her with a spade on her back till she was unconscious. That was just one fun day in the block. And every day things like that happened. You saw people being beaten. People were there from every country in Europe, the Balkan states. There were all different languages spoken. They were like political prisoners. They'd opened the jails, and the prisoners of the jails in Germany were put in charge of us. So they were the capos. The capos went over us, and they were so bad. They would also beat us and hurt us, and we were scared of them, terrible. You know you're not going to live a long time there. And then every day while I was there, you could see the flames licking on the sky, the smoke. Every day they were burning people. One day, a high German commander comes into the camp and he said, I need people to work for me. I'm going to pick some people. And he picked Flora, and he picked like maybe 30, 40 people, and not me. And Flora said, come here. And I went over to her to hold her hand, and he said, hey, you little black devil, you. Did I say you could go there? And I said, nein, my Schwester. My sister. I go, ich gehe. And I don't know if she was going to be picked to go to the gas chamber, to go to pick for a job, I had no idea. But where she goes, I go. And so he picked up his truncheon to hit me, and as he was about just to hit me on my hands, I let go. Oh, I could have really been killed for that. But he laughed. He thought it was very funny that the guts to do that. And I went with Flora. And maybe I should not have gone for the job. But the job, why I'm going to tell you this, what we had. The people came off the trains, of the cattle trains, and we were on the just off the platform, on the grass. And there was a ditch. Over there was a pile of bricks, and over there you had to put the pile of bricks. And in the middle you had to jump over. So when the people came off the trains, they saw people working, Arbeit macht frei. They were working, working with bricks. And they would look at us like, oh yeah, people working, they would like wave at us. And then Mengele, the commander of the camp, was standing by the gate. And as they came off, they did a selection for the gas chamber. And as you will tell your grandchildren one day, when I say the children of the last generation, to see a survivor, but you can say, I was a witness to the selection of the gas chamber. And now, that was the worst day of my life. Nothing could be worse. We were exhausted from carrying the bricks and jumping over, and we saw these people go. I saw the van go with all the crippled people. They didn't get selected, they went straight to the road to the gas chamber. I said to Flora, Papa, Papa, that's how Papa went. And indeed, that is how he went. And then I saw the babies in the mother's arms, the little beautiful little boys and little girls. They didn't come in. Some came in. Some strong young men and some strong women they let in. But most of them were on that road, the road. I had nightmares for years, the road to the gas chamber. How could it have been possible that people volunteered for jobs like that? Of course, the prisoners had themselves to do a lot of that work. They had to go when the bodies were being gassed, to pick out the gold out of their mouth, to take shaves off their hairs. We went back to Auschwitz several years ago, my husband and I, and we saw in the window there they had beautiful heads of hair. One barrack was full of 1 million pair of shoes, children's shoes and other shoes. I was standing there, ice cold inside. I was looking at it like, I didn't see this, but I was there. And so now we know that we are in this horrible death camp, the largest death camp of the 6 major death camps in Poland. And we didn't know how many others there were. We thought this was the only hell on earth. And after we saw that selection, we got an extra piece of bread. And we walked back to our barracks, and we were picked again several days in a row for that job. We were numb. I couldn't cry anymore. Numb. It was like something that you were there, but you weren't there. And so our only salvation was if you could get out of there, if you just got out of that camp. But otherwise we're going to die there. And one day, after we were there for the summer months, a German officer comes into our camp and he said, "We're looking for the Phillips group." And we nearly attacked him. "We are the Phillips group, all of us here, the Phillips group." He said, "Well, somebody's going to come from the telephone factory and is going to interview you to see what work you did for Philips." And he came in to the camp, and I was so pale, I had got so thin, and my sister pinched my cheeks and hit me in the face. I got color, and I stood up very tall for him, and I told him what lamps I had been making for Philips. He said, "Okay, I'll take you." And one by one, he took my sister and took a lot of other people to take to the factories in Germany to work. And we walked out of Auschwitz through the gate, not believing that we were walking out, because Mr. Phillips had trained us to be a valuable tool for the German. And I did say, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad," a Hebrew prayer, but I had not been able to say a prayer all the time I was in Auschwitz. And I prayed that all the people would be saved in there. We were put on a train and we went to Reichenbach. It was outside a small village out of Breslau, Upper Silesia. And when we came to that small camp, it was really set up for people that would work in the factory. And the factory was a telephone factory. And the machines were the same as we had worked with in Holland, with the Philips. And we were making the same production line. So we, at that time, had saved our life because of that. We thought, oh, maybe now the war will be over soon and nothing else will happen to us. Not so. It was enough already. Flora was sick. As long as we got home, my sister became very ill, pneumonia, and she had terrible migraine headaches and was in the hospital. She couldn't walk, she couldn't sit up, she couldn't do anything. And after she was there for a week, the nurse in the sick barracks said, "Shella, Flora has to get out of here. They come once every few weeks to empty the barracks, and you know where they go. Get her out." I said, "Flora, get up." She said, "Leave me. I want you to leave me. I can't." And then one of the girls came up to me. She had lost all her family, and she said, "Shella, I want to be your sister. I want to be your sister." I said, "Okay, you're my sister. Help Flora get out of the bed." And so we got her out of the bed. We brought her back in the barracks, and it was on a Friday night, so Saturday and Sunday we didn't work, and we took care of her, and we fed her. And after the Monday, we dressed her, and we made her walk back to the factory. And she had to go to work. You have to work. And bit by bit, we made her do it. And so she worked. And we saved her life out of the barracks. And so, after we were there for several months, and we worked. In January of 1945, Auschwitz was liberated by the Russians. And we saw the war being played out in the sky. We saw the Russian planes fly over, because it was very close to Poland. And we saw them fly over, we heard the guns being shot at them, the cannons, and we know that the Russians are very close, and the Germans were very worried, they were scared to death. But we didn't care. We wanted them to come, liberate us, whatever would be. And we thought we were going to be liberated by the end of the month of January or February. But just when end of January, February came, in the middle of the night, they called up all of our names, all of our numbers, and we had to stand to attention, and they said, they're leaving because the Russians are coming, there are no trains available, we're going to walk over the mountains, the Carpathian Mountains, in the heart of winter, February, snow this high, cold, freezing cold. And so we had to walk, and the Germans had to walk with us. Also a lot of people from the villages would walk over the mountains to escape the Russians, they were afraid. And we were in not a good shape, especially my sister. And we walked and walked, and we had a little piece of bread that we had with us and a little dish and a cup, and once in a while they would have some hot water, hot coffee. We slept by the side of the farmhouses where we spent the night. And so the walk over the mountains was horrendous because we were not in a good shape, and people would die on that trip. From the 400 women, half didn't make it from our group. What happened, you would hear shots come out, and you'd hear the revolver shots, and you know that somebody had fallen in the snow, I couldn't walk anymore, and they would shoot them, because what were they going to do? Nobody could carry them. And so when you hear those shots, walk a little faster, although you can't. I had a blister under my foot that was all the size of my foot, this thick. The sole had worn off of my boot. And my sister, as sick as she was, one girl had a pair of extra boots on her belt, and she said, I buy those boots for Shella. And she said, I need those in case my boots wear off. She said, no, Shella has no sole. She's walking on her bare feet in the snow. I give you my portion of bread. That's how you buy things with food. And she gave her portion of the bread to get for me the boots so I could have some on my feet. And so it went on. After we walked for several days over the mountains, slowly, Flora got very sick. She couldn't breathe. She went up to the German high command, and she said, shoot me, I can't walk anymore. And he took a scarf over her head, and she was all bald, and he started to laugh at her. And he said to the people around him, the other guards, shall we shoot this Jew? She can't walk anymore. And I ran up, and I don't know what made me do it, because you never know what you do in an instinctive moment, intuition. I ran up to her, and I said to the guard, that's my sister, and I take care of her. And I hit her hard in her face, left and right. I hit her till she was crying with the pain. She said, Shella, why are you doing that? I said, you come with me, I'll tell you why. And she come with me, and he laughed, the soldier, and I took her with me. I said, I take good care of her. And so we walked together, and my girlfriend, this adopted sister, said, come, she was also ill. We have to help each other, and we walked on each other's strength. Where we got our strength or energy, God only knows. But after many more days, we arrived at the Czechoslovakian border. We had made it to the other side of the mountain, exhausted. Many of us not with us anymore, sick. And so there was a train waiting for us again, another cattle train. We were terrified to go in there. But this time the train went all over Germany. And it go back to Auschwitz. The Russians had been away in the middle of Germany. We went to West Germany. And I hit another 5 more camps that we stayed in. A few weeks here, a few weeks there, back in the train. A few weeks here, back in the train. People were shoved in the train, languages were spoken, criminals were in the train. We were terrified. And we thought we were going to be killed in the train by some of the other prisoners. There were murderers among us. And so I could go on these train rides. I could go 2 hours about those train rides. But finally, we come to a small camp toward West Germany. It's on top of the mountain. And inside the mountain was a salt mine. And there were machines set up. And we worked even in those machines towards the end of the war. But we weren't there for long because they didn't know what to do, what was safe. And we were brought to another camp. We were close to Hamburg. It was a very small camp. The people died of typhus in that camp. There was a girl and her mother. The mother lived and the daughter was 17 and died of typhus. We were filthy, filthy dirty. The dirt was this thick on our skin. We were covered with lice. We were starving hungry. We were thirsty. We were sick. But the war had come to an end, and we knew it. And so we wondered what they were going to do with us. Are they going to put us in the train and shoot us? How many people are alive? What is going to happen to us? And one day we get up and all the SS guards are gone and some old soldiers are there. And they said, we're going to put you on the cattle train out there. We have to put you away. And they said, well, where are you going to bring us? We don't know. We're going on the train. And we had to line up and we stood and we walked to the station. And there were the cattle cars again. We were so afraid to get in there. But we were pushed in there and were sitting there completely depleted of energy, thirsty, hungry, 65, 70 pounds, all of us, sick, very sick. And the train starts going. And we thought maybe this was going to be the end, they were going to kill us. But the train started to go. And after several hours, and I don't know how many hours, I'd lost time by then, the train stopped. And Shella looks through the slats of the car, and I see a name. It's not a German name. It looks something different. And somebody said, I think they are in Denmark. We're on the Danish border. The train stopped. We had crossed the Danish border. The German soldiers had jumped off the train and left us standing on the border. And the Danish Red Cross jumped on the train, opened the doors and said, ladies, freedom, Hitler is dead, you are free, you are in Denmark. The war is over. And I said, are you sure? Are you sure? And they said, yes, you're free. And we sat there, none of us could jump up and say, we just sat there, like this. And we couldn't believe it. You mean we lived through all this? We are alive? Full of lies. And the train went on to Copenhagen. And there tents were set up. We were one of the very first groups when the war finished to be an exchange group with POWs. Mr. Phillips, behind the scenes. We were there and a man was walking on the platform and he said, I'm proud to have you come to Denmark. It was the King of Denmark who greeted us. After we were there for several days, doctors examined us and people were put immediately in the sick train and we went over the Skagerrak to Sweden. And we were put in quarantine in a school for about 6 weeks where diseases would come out. First of all, what I remember is when we arrived in Sweden, the Red Cross, the Dutch legation was there singing the national anthem, and then they gave us hot chocolate and little sandwiches and hot cocoa. It was so delicious. And oatmeal, and we got badly ill from the oatmeal. But it was so delicious. I remember licking the cup and the chocolate, the hot chocolate. Oh, it was so good. And then they put us in the bath and they took a scrubbing brush this big to my back to scrub. And we were full covered in lice. It took a lot. And right away they put the sick people in the hospitals. My sister was taken away and TB right away put in a hospital. I was 2 weeks in liberation and I celebrated the 15th of May, my 17th birthday. I was 12 when they marched in and I celebrated my 17th in liberation. 5 years. I'm a teenager now, I insist. And so we looked for those, there was no TV or email in those days, so we looked for the radio and by mail to see who was alive from each country. They would ticker tape and we would get names. There was nobody from my family that came back from the camps. And Flora and I looked at each other and we said, you mean The two little girls, we are the only ones. Couldn't be, but it was. One aunt survived in hiding with two daughters. All the other aunts and cousins, all of them were murdered. They had gone to Auschwitz Survivor, where they never came in. But Flora and I lived. It was hard to believe. And after my 17th birthday, 2 weeks later, or 2 days later, I became very, very ill. And I was rushed to the hospital, and I had typhus. And I was in the hospital at my deathbed. After a couple of days, they called Flora to go say goodbye to her sister. But forget it. When she came, I was peeling an orange, sniffing the orange skin, putting it in the sheets, in my pillow. I didn't want to give up on the skin. And I said, the nurse had said that during the night I had said when I was so ill, ich will leben. I want to live. I promised to live. And I lived. And I was 9 months in a hospital. And so was my sister. And after the end of that, we went later on to Holland. We walked in the street where the family had lived. And we went by the orphanage where all the children were. A neighbor came out and said one night they'd taken all those children in a van, never to be heard of again. You mean we are the only ones left from that older children's home? We're the only one left from the family? I went to this Hen, I looked at the telephone book to see if I could find some names. I found Henny's name, my girlfriend. I called. Is that you? She said, yes, I live. I went on my bicycle, I got a bicycle, and I went very, very fast to her house. And now, even today, we go back and forth to see each other. We're like sisters. She lived. And she said, the school that we went to, where all the Jewish students were, her and I are the only one from that school that came back. Of 140,000 Jews in Holland, out of 9 million people, 5,000 women came back from the concentration camp. And Flora and I were 2 of those 5,000. I went to England, I married, I had 2 sons. My sister came over for the birth of my oldest son. His name is Leon. And she said, I have a chance to go to America. I won't go unless you promise me you will come too. And I said, where you go, I go. You go, and I promise that I will save my pennies, that I will come to see you. She went to America the year Leon was born in '49. And I came in 1952 with 2 little boys, 3.5 and 1.5. And she lived in Portland, Oregon. I said, where the hell is that? I can't find it on the map. I looked, I couldn't find it. She said, it's all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And I came, and I arrived in June in '52, and the sun was shining on Mount Hood, and I felt I had come home. And Flora ran up to the plane, and she said, my little sister, my little baby sister, we will never be apart. We lived together within 5 minutes from each other until the day she died 16 years ago when she was very ill. But she had 3 boys, and I had a daughter, and between us we had 6 children, and we raised our families together, and we had many happy years here. Thank you.
The hour is late, some of you may have to go, but we would like to give you the opportunity for a few minutes to ask shall have questions if you have any. So please just raise your hand, stand and speak loudly, and she'll field questions for a few minutes. Yes, sir. Here.
I was curious to know what your family did in Portland.
Well, I myself, late in life, started a business, a Dutch butter cake, delicious to die for, from me. So and it was my grandmother's recipe, and I started that and in my kitchen, and then it went, my nephew, my sister's older child, took it over, and I used to make 40 a day by hand, and in the end we made 3,000 by machine. So I developed that, and I did that. I was very proud because Papa said I could do anything. And I catered and did that in my later life. And my first husband was a builder, this country here. And my wonderful husband now, for 16 years, Mr. J. Kryszek, a survivor also, from Poland. His whole family was killed. At that time they killed him in the vans, they didn't have a gas chamber yet. And he's a very strong survivor. And he had a manufacturing plant. He came and worked day and night at that. And we all are very hard workers when I look at the survivors. We were determined to make our own way, to work, and this country had an opportunity that you could do anything you wanted to do. Papa said you could do anything you want to do, but you could do anything, you had a chance. And I think a very strong desire from the survivors was to prove to themselves, to make a living for their children, to be part of the community, to pay back to this country what the country gave to us, and to really be part of the community. And most of all, while we were all growing up here, all those years, I was 24 years of age when I got here, and 2 little babies, but most of all, to be part of society, to work in the community, and to teach tolerance, and to say to the people, to the children, that hate begets hate, and not to be prejudiced, and to talk about it. And everybody that knows me, whoever, hundreds of thousands of people that I've touched, that's my message. Is that we have to share and care for each other, as we are doomed. That's the way we have to live, and that's what the future has to be. We have to care. Thank you.
Yes.
How did the war change your faith?
How did the war change your faith? How did the war change your faith? Your belief in God?
That's a very difficult question to answer, and it is very individual. There are people in the camp that would pray, and we would laugh at them. Then I couldn't pray. And then you condemn God. And there was also in the Warsaw Ghetto that the rabbis got together, and there's a story on that. You know that. They condemn God. But then on the other hand, there were people that we are raised with a strong faith in Judaism of what it stands for. And then after the war, I wanted my children to have that beauty and to raise them back in that, and my husband too, with his children. There is an inner feeling inside something that you believe in Judaism and to believe again. It was very hard for me to do this again. Very hard. And some people, but it's individual. There are people that were religious right after, and there are people that went completely away from it. So there is different sides to that.
Yes.
Were you ever able to get your stuff at all?
Did you ever get any possessions from your house?
No. Good question. When the Jews came back to Holland and to Belgium and to France and to all over the country, there was nothing left. The government didn't know how to deal with you. There was nothing. Some of the neighbors had things, and some of them would give it back, and some of them didn't. They say, you live? Oh, we thought you were dead. But, so there was that feeling, and then there were the good ones. The chicken farmer who had my father's possession, who called me in from the street to have some of Papa's silver. But other stuff, no. We lost our home, everything, the home that everything was lost. And 2 years ago, I got $3,000 from the Dutch government to pay back that I'm registered as a survivor, and what my family lost, and everyone got $3,000. So I have my grandchild to college. So that's it. Yeah.
Did you ever find out what happened to any guy with
Yes. When we were betrayed, that man was put in jail. The family that hit me, they did not interrogate me, and they could have done, and I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what you will do on interrogation. But I kept in touch with the family with the 5 children, and I went back to Holland in July, and the oldest boy, that was 16 now, who's 78, whatever, and his wife said, okay, you can give him a kiss, it's all right. And I love that family dearly. And
The red light. I don't know, I wasn't looking for it earlier. I wasn't looking for the red light earlier. I don't think so. Wait.